Hey everybody, it's Kenny K here, bringing you a new review. And sorry of the get up, but I'm um, a little bit. I have a little pain in my throat, and I'm not feeling too well. So just apologize that I sound a little bit shrill. But also, it's my relaxed get up to review my review get up. Now, the reason why I wanted to do this now is because The Exorcist 1990. I saw this one yesterday night, and I've seen this one multiple times. I think it's the second best Exorcist movie. I still say that the first Exorcist movie is one of the creepiest movies ever. If you've seen the what this movie did in the 70s, in 1973, when it came out, yeah, if you ever saw those old scenes or new scenes that people were running out of the theater, and they were puking, and they were like crying, and they didn't want to go home. It was too, real for comfort, and people fainting. I remember when it came out in Belgium, there was there were paramedics in the theater hall with movie was, you know, and people were fainting. As this That's it, something that I never heard of. Jaws had somewhat of a similar effect, but not that they were running out of the theater, and they had the effect of not going into water anymore. But Exorcist, the first one, that was really fucked up what happened then. But we had the Heretic, which is basically a sequel to the first one. We have Linda Blair, and the reason why I'm mentioning Linda Blair is because next weekend there is a horror convention. I love horror.com, yeah, and Linda Blair will be a guest signing. Okay, Kane Hodder will be there, Robert England, um, David Lowry, who plays Michael Myers in Halloween Resurrection, the director of the remake of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre into the first remake from 2003, a good remake. And Linda Blair, like I said, so I was that's what I'm talking about, the Heretic, and a lot of people missed Linda Blair in part three, but to give that extra charm. But I'm thinking, after seeing Heretic, no thanks. But there are fans of Heretic. They say if you watch the 3 hour version, there's a 3 hour version of Heretic, it's a lot better, and you understand everything is pieced to better. You understand the movie better, and you think, oh, that's why. And I admit that that's a lot of time that's the case, because I Salem's Lot. I saw that movie, the original, 1979. You have the theatrical version, an hour and 30 minutes, plus something like that. Um, then you have the 3 hour version, and it's what they all cut out, and that ended in the cutting room floor. The thinking, why that scene? Some scenes were like edited, edit, cut right to another scene, and looking at these long versions, it makes more sense. And the Heretic, I never seen the 3 hour version, but should make more sense than it is. But Exorcist 3, William Peter Blatty, decided he wanted to make um, a sequel to the first one, ignoring the second one. But he first wrote the book Legion, and they started to ask him, yeah, there's a screenplay, do you mind, blah 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 blah. He said okay, and then he actually asked John Carpenter to film the movie of The Exorcist 3. And I thought, oh, that would be, I think that he would have done a good job. But the problem was Carpenter didn't came eye to eye with Blatty, and he felt that Blatty wanted to do it himself, so he stepped down. And eventually, we get the movie. We get a, except Linda Blair, we get and talking about Salem's Lot. He's also in Salem's Lot. Ed Flanders, that's Father Dyer. Brad Dourif as the Gemini killer. Veneman. His name is Veneman. And then George C. Scott, a great actor playing Lieutenant William Kinderman. And Jason Miller from the first Exorcist, who plays Father Damien Karras. Now, the the Kinderman was already in the first movie, right? He was already in the first movie, and he was good friends with Karras. And Dyer was also in the first movie. Now I gotta sort of. It's a long time that I saw the first movie. I remember Mrs. McNeil goes to, Karras and this and that to ask help, and I think it's the demon who's talking in backwards. Beware, beware, watch out, father, watch out. And then they say the priest. I still forget it. Max von Sydow is the actor's name. The one that knows the demon. But the first one is basically a movie about a girl who's possessed, and we see the stages of possession. You see, stage one, she has an imaginary friend, Captain Howdy. Stage two, she begins feeling sick. Stage three, uh, more and more weird shits, and eventually stage five. The Exorcist 3 was actually more a movie meant to be a movie about fate meeting science, and have this mystery, thriller, horror story, detective story actually, about occult murders. And also in the book, the Gemini killer's body was never found. So, I'm just gonna, but I'm trying to explain a little bit. But this movie is really, I'm going to the positives and the negatives immediately. Um, but and this movie also, this movie didn't need any gore, because the way that, so you have there's a young black boy that gets killed in the same MO as the Gemini did, and then a priest who gets killed by a very creepy. There are very creepy scenes in a confession booth. He opens it and you only see blackness, but you hear this like an old woman's voice, and then talking about all the kills the Gemini did, the 17-year-old. In this way, the first one was a waitress. I ripped out her throat and watched her bleed to death. Oh, so much blood. And then the demon voice comes in, and he's like, the priest, and his head was then found on the altar, and they find multiple fingerprints from Venomon, from even Karis they find. So, and although all these scenes are explained what happens, although they never really, the killer explains what happened to Father Dyer. He's dead, and yeah, it's a little spoiler, but it happens in the fairly soon. And I thought, oh fuck, man, that's fucked up. Dead, and he's explaining that. And it's, like I said, you don't need to see the gore, but apparently they did film a few gory scenes, because I've got a picture of the priest guild. What the because that was a demon. That was a demon, because you see it like with wind coming in, and it could have been the old woman that goes out of church. That is, uh, that's yeah. You don't know, and you can see there's a here. I'll show you the picture, and you can clearly see that this was filmed, or just they took a picture of the priest how he died, because you see in the movie that they're taking pictures of the inside of the photo booth where he was killed. You see the blood all over the walls, and he was killed in the photo booth, and then the head was later on. They say the head, they found the head because you see them putting this brown bally thing in, from this altar, but he has a head in his hand, so so yeah. I don't know. There, the thing is, they made multiple cuts of this movie, and in 2016 you got the theatrical cut. It's a little easier to follow, and then you've got the director's cut, and their thing that's you a little bit harder to follow. So let's talk about the positives, because I don't want to spoil this movie. I recommend this movie. You see this movie. It's a talky movie. So talky, I mean, it's a slow burn. It's you have to. It's a psychological horror movie, if you have to call it horror movie. It's a religious horror movie. Listen how Lieutenant Kinderman is finding these bodies. It's just, especially the black boy, what's happened to that boy was a sacrilege and racist that, I mean, fucked up beyond all recognition. If it, and like I said, the explanation in the movie is already enough to creep you out. But there are creepy moments, like I said, with the priest opening the little door in the confession booth, and he hears this weird, creepy old woman's voice that goes into a demon, and you see nothing. It's dark, and this movie also has, so these are positives, right? These are all positives. The fact that it's, I like that it's creeping you out basically by talking, but you do have jump scares and creepy scenes in there. There's a scene in here That's probably the best jump scare slash kill scene I ever seen, and it's all it has all no sound. It's and it takes like 5 minutes and almost I think 5 minutes, and you think nothing's gonna happen. But then I'm not gonna spoil it if you never saw it because you're if you, but have if you see a scene if you see the movie for the first time, you know you're a little the younger generation, you see this movie for the first time again, it's a talkie movie, so keep that in mind. It's not a movie like the first Exorcist where the power of Christ compels you. No, this movie was actually not meant to do an exorcism. This was a movie meant about Lieutenant Kinderman and doubting his fate and him being more a man of science. Um, and the scene what I'm talking about, that jump scare scene, it's like a 5 minute scene. Things happen. There's a little fake jump scare in there with a patient that's sleeping, and she wakes him up, and then okay, that's the fake one, and then but you see there's a cop sitting there, but the cop constantly goes away, then he comes back, then he's asked because there are a lot of cops in the hospital, which has an insane asylum award, you know, for insane people too, non-aggressive and aggressive ones. And there are a lot of cops there because Father Dyer was killed in that hospital. So Kinderman is pissed. Like they became good friends. These two, and it's also a very beautiful friendship. Like two grumpy old men comedy. They can. It could have been the first part without the killings, of course. It could have been a comedy between Ed Flanders and George C. Scott as the grumpy old men comedy. It's yeah, because Father Dyer, they all the acting of that's also plus point. The acting is just top notch. That's why I say you don't need Linda Blair, which is a good actress, but you don't need her. Ed Flanders that Father Dyer played. He, like I say, he's like this almost a hippie priest. It's super interesting. He's like he smokes like hell, and he's like this priest that believes in God, but also has a little bit of a science. He thinks faith and science is the same thing. Of course, Kinderman, they are always discussing, you know, they're always, but there are no, there's, it's not anger, it's friendship. It's Brad Dourif in this
Look at
movie,
me! Look at me! And tell me what you see!
Brad Dourif always has been an underrated actor. He's an A-lister in my opinion, but in Hollywood, he's an A-lister. Playing Patient X, who basically, but because that Kinderman at some point goes into the insane asylum ward and comes across a door with a room 11, I'm not sure, and somebody's calling to him, and he goes in, and he's scared out of his mind, and what he's seen in there, and that's a little bit of a problem in the if you have the original theatrical version or if you see I think the director's cut I just did that. I mean, what happens is he thinks he sees Father Karras, and Jason Miller is in the movie, and he doesn't do, has a lot of lines, but I think Jason Miller is a good actor. Playing Father Damien Karras. That's a spoiler of the end of The Exorcist. He basically they couldn't get the demon. What they say is Pazuzu, but Pazuzu was never mentioned as far as I know, not by both priests who were trying to exorcise Regan. I always was her Negan, but Regan, and it's only mentioned in part two when Regan again seems to be possessed, and she says, or the African lady says, I am, or an African lady that is possessed saying, I am Pazuzu, and that, okay, but Blatty never recognized Pazuzu. He never recognized a demon called Pazuzu. His demons, his demon are demons because when eventually Kinderman goes in the patient X's room, you see in the theatrical version, it's Brad Dorff all the way. And he's always crying, even when he's yelling, he's crying. It's so well done. It's weird and it's creepy, and and he says, "We are legion. We are all." So meaning that there are multiple demons. So that's a little explanation there. So Brad Dourif's story is great, but in that's for the negative side a little bit, in my opinion. But okay, and the ending was also different, but I'm not gonna spoil that. And but the of course producers they always fuck it up, and they wanted something. They wanted an exorcism in there and put, and that's also for the negatives. But I'm still not done yet. Of positives, the atmosphere, the tension, even the eeriness, this dripping of the movie, even when they're just talking. There's a scene when he's talking to a priest that knew Father Dyer, and he hears something, a wind, and it's a demonic force that's basically entered this church, and he Kinderman goes after it, but the priest is just sitting there drinking his what I think is his whiskey, and he's going after it, and he sees this weird hallway. With the end, you see this like it looks like a demon clown with a knife statue. Then he goes into another room, and then you see these little feet coming towards him, and it's apparently one of the helpers of the priest from that church. But it's like a little jump scare. But thing is, you're already on edge because he's following this. Basically, the demon is baiting him. Same like the demon goes into the church where they killed that priest in the confession booth. So there are multiple demons, and apparently, and what's cool about it is, especially the patient X, who's a demon, who's demons, and has a master. We're talking probably Satan. That would be the most obvious choice. Say, uses uses patients, possesses them, and especially the catatonic ones. They're easy to possess. Now, now to explain the 2016 version, okay. I'm going to negatives now. Um, there's a lot to say about this movie, but I can talk hours about this movie, and that's just One of the negatives, in my opinion, was in that fries your brain is basically that they, in the director's cut or the 2016 cut, I believe in that cut, is that they, oh yeah, or was it a reshoot? I'm not even sure about that. There's so many. I believe it's a reshoot that they did. I'm not sure that they flip constantly in the patient X, his cell. They flip constantly through from Brad Dourif to Jason Miller. So Brad Dourif's talking, the Gemini. First he sees Karis, and then I don't know who I am, and then he goes in the shadow, and then he comes out of the shadow. They use the shadow so the face can. You don't see the face morphing, and out of the shadow is I am Gemini. I'm the Gemini killer. Look at me, and it's positive, but at the same time, it's confusing as hell. I'm not saying this is as actually this isn't a negative, but it's more in a gray area because it makes it very confusing. I think if you want to see the movie in its true form, you gotta see the original cut, because where Brad Dourif is the patient X, but Brad Dourif was captured 16 years ago and killed on the electric chair at the same night 15 years before, when Father Karras jumped out of the window and presumably died. And the Gemini spirit was floundering there, but it was a very demonic area, and a demon, some say Pazuzu, some say a random demon, took him as a vessel, put him into Karras' body. Karras was buried and came out of the grave, and there was a priest there called Father Fane, and he was the last one there when they buried Karras, and eventually, because Kinderman sees Father Karras in that cell, he exhumes his grave, which says 19 died 1973, age 40. When he jumped out of the, and there's somebody else in the grave. Father Fane's in the grave because they say he died by fright, a heart attack from fright, and they found, so that's all creepy and good and well, but it now going to the negatives, it's too much. It's way too much. Okay, you can be a psychological horror movie, but please keep it somewhat, there, that angel, that there, the scene where he goes into Kinderman goes into this room which looks like heaven, because you got these long haired guys with in white clothes and in um, angel wings, and you've got the black boy, and you see Kinderman saying sorry to him. I didn't want you to die, and you see his head is he's coming. He came straight from the corner. His head is like stapled back on. We also see Dyer with his head stapled back on. So, and apparently I didn't see that Samuel L. Jackson was in a, or there's a cameo of Samuel L. Jackson. That guy's in every movie, man. I didn't see him. what he was doing there, who he was. Didn't see him. But it ends with Father Dyer like doing this in his bed, and a weird, creepy scene, and that, and after that we know Father Dyer died. So I'm guessing that's the moment when he gets killed, when Kinderman is in that like heaven or even maybe hell or even maybe limbo area. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. And and the producers wanted that stupid exorcism that's really tacked on in this movie, and they introduced this guy named Father Morning who also did an exorcism before, and after he exorcised a demon, but his hair turned white, and we see this guy, but we see that the demon, he's sitting in his room praying, and we see the demon coming back. He had this little bird in a box that was hurt, and he dies, and he doesn't have he almost has no dialogue, and at the end they put him in there to do an exorcism that lasts 2 minutes. And yeah, just to have an exorcism in there, but it wasn't needed. But that's again producers who want, no, we want an exorcism, it's the exorcist, so we want an exorcism. And Blatty, knowing Blatty, with the first director of the first movie, I mean, these guys were constantly arguing. These guys were temper. They had a temperament for it, like Stanley Kubrick, same kind of deal. But Blatty eventually, going the wishes of the producers, the guys with the money. I'll put a tacked on stupid exorcism in there with a guy that we barely don't know, Father Morning. So those are a little bit the negatives. They're trying too much. And you have a gray, like I said, gray area on the fence with that flipping of the heads of Father Karras, and that Karras was keep dying. He was dying, and because Dyer was there giving him his last rites. He also played in the first movie, but and then, like I said, and they're even talking about the kills that are happening. That it's, oh, the Gemini killer is bad, but he's dead 16 years ago, and it can be a copycat because Kinderman says that they left details out of the papers, so we won't have crackpot copycats doing this shit, killing people. And explained that the Gemini killer put in a big Gemini sign, carved it on the back, and took one of the fingers, like a pinky or something. But actually, it wasn't like that. The real Gemini carved it in the hands and took the this finger, where is the index finger? I'm not sure. Took this finger away, so they lied about how the Gemini killed worked. So, and it was exactly how the Gemini killed. So it's so confusing at the end. And basically, what it is that Kinnerman's friendship, basically, that's what counts. Is he wants his friend Father Karras, but eventually he is also in the theatrical version. Karras is in there, but being tortured by the demons for what he did to the other demon that was in Regan. If that's not Pazuzu or not, it doesn't matter. He's being basically tormented, and what Kinderman wants is that he finally can his spirit can rest. That's what his friend finally can sleep tight. You know that's what he wants, and that's what the movie's about. But it's Kinderman, his grief and wanting, you know, but they make it too complicated a little, and that's my negative. They make it way too complicated, and the explanations are there. Yeah, that's why I'm saying listen to this movie. Listen and listen and listen and listen. The movie takes an hour and 45 minutes. The version that I see, that's the one with the flipping. But I'm not sure if that's the 2016 director's cut or the reshot version. I'm not sure because there were multiple shoots. It had a lot of problems because, like I said, and the book is completely different. Like I said, they didn't found the Gemini killer's body, so it could be that he's still killing out there. So, but there were like these like I said, gory scenes filmed, like that priest, and also this the statue here. That one's in the movie, I believe. That's being sacrilegiously, you know, vandalized. Mother Mary, I believe, and but the movie didn't need those gore scenes. The explanation, like I said, the talking in this movie is great. It's a great movie. It doesn't have a lot of negatives, but in my opinion, they made it a little bit too, by doing reshoots, by doing this, and they made it too complicated and too. You end up by thinking, wait, what? And still to this day, if I see that movie, I'm still thinking. I almost got it now, but I'm still thinking. I'm still scratching a little bit on my head of, okay, but you know, but the ending, not the exorcism that they tack on, that's bullshit. But the ending is very. There are two different endings, by the way. The exorcism one, but the original one. we Nowadays you'll find the one with the exorcism. Okay, I'm not gonna spoil that one, but I'm gonna spoil the one that Blatty wanted to use. So, spoiler warning for the Blatty ending. The When the patient, uh, one of the what patient X referred as an old friend, goes to the family, Kinderman's family, and trying to kill the daughter because the killer uses these shears, these big ass shears that coroners use, but thick blades to snap a body in half. So big and thick they are. Kinderman, just at the nick of time, um, pushes his daughter back, and you see like the blade almost just nicking her neck. And of course, the demon, the nurse demon, is basically like mega strong, wanting to try to kill Kinderman, but apparently Karis coming back and and fighting against the demon fucks up the demon's plans. He, and Kinderman, for some reason, knows this, goes to the the insane asylum ward, takes his gun, goes in, he sees the patient X, but he also sees Father Karras, and he says then, shoot, shoot now, shoot now. He said, yeah, and he shoots him multiple times, and then one last coup de grace through his head. And what happens with Kinderman is that he ends up in jail, but with a smile, because now he knows his friend and also Father Dyer isn't in the demon's realm anymore, and they all can just rest easily. But he's in jail, so he has a little bit, you know, it's a little bit of a gray ending, but that's the original ending. But the ending that most of us will see is with an exorcism and a lot more. So I'm not gonna spoil that one. That's for the people who want to see. But that being said, this movie gets a 7 out of 10, and I really recommend it. So see you next time. Bye.